Here's our interview. Your Eminence, thank you so much for joining us and being here.
Thank you.
There are fraternal delegates, these non-Catholic representatives of Christian churches here at the Synod on Synodality. What kind of insight are they bringing here to the Synod? And what is your message to Catholics and the faithful who may be concerned that there are non-Catholic influences here at the Synod?
This was always the case in the synods. Always were invited ecumenical delegates. In this synod, more, 16. Last year were only 12, and then some representative of some churches has said we want to be present there, and the Pope has invited 16 person, and these are also on the table and discuss and give contributions, but cannot vote. No.
So they cannot vote. What do you think their contribution is? Like, how do they help us as Catholics and walk this synodal path that the Holy Father speaks about?
Synodality is a very ecumenical issue. As Pope Francis said, always the ecumenical journey is synodal, and the synodal journey the Catholic Church is going now is ecumenical. And for preparation of this synod, we have made some symposium on the Angelicum about synodality in the Eastern churches and in the Western churches. We have produced 2 books, Listening to the East and Listening to the West, because every church has a synodal dimension, and they can give beautiful contribution how they live the synodality in her church, and this is helping for us.
Synodality and listening to members of the church and the faithful from around the world. Does synodality, does it contradict papal authority? Does it oppose the ability of the See of Peter to speak with authority? Can you address that?
No, I think we make the clear difference between decision making and decision taking. And in the process of decision making, all people of the church must be participated and included in this process, but the decision taking is the responsibility and authority of the bishop and of the Bishop of Rome as the Pope. And when we respect this is a very good issue for a better understanding in the church. And I think in this synod it's very important to see the different vision, the different experience in all over the world, in Asia, in Africa, in North America, in South America, in Europe, and to see to have a better vision what happens in the church worldwide.
One thing we've heard from some of your brother bishops this year or this week is precisely that synodality, the synods help us to understand what the church is going through in other parts of the world, because it can happen that we can think that only the issues that we live with in the United States or in the English-speaking world are the important ones. But you, of course, are the prefect of the dicastery for the unity of Christians, and as a sort of collaborator with the Holy Father here in the Eternal City, in the heart of the Church, I imagine that you also have a larger view of the greater Church and the greater issues than we do.
Yes, we are in a universal church, and we must respect this, that we have different experience in all over the world, and it's clear every bishop comes with his concerns of his country, but he must also hear what is the concerns of the other, and in this synod we must learn to hear one another, in hearing one another to hearing of the Holy Spirit, what the Holy Spirit want to say to the church today and for the future. And this is very important, that we have not discussion, we have not quarrel, but we have hearing of one another and to experience what the Holy Spirit is acting today in the church.
One of the things as we wind down, and I know the Synod delegates will be voting on the document on Saturday, and I know that your deliberations are all very confidential, but it does seem that for all of these synods, especially last year, but that this has been corrected might be too strong of a word for this year, that some have seen the synods as a possibility of reform or change, but this hasn't been Pope Francis's vision. His is more, it's about listening and listening to the Holy Spirit. And it seems that this week that might leave some people disappointed in the final results.
The main theme of the Synod is not this reform and another reform, but is synodality. And it's clear to deepen the synodal dimension in the church is the true reform which the Holy Father wants for the church, that we have a better hearing from one another.
As we're here in Rome, the backdrop to the Synod is a world rife with violence, from the Russia-Ukraine war to the Israel-Hamas war. In fact, it was at last year's October General Assembly that there was the October 7th Hamas terrorist attack. In your role as prefect of the Dicastery for Promoting Christian Unity, Your Eminence, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts. If you have advice for Catholics right now on how to best support our Jewish brothers and sisters amid this war, especially with reports of the rise of anti-Semitism around the globe.
Yes, the anti-Semitism is very growing in different countries, above all in Europe and in Germany. And this is a very big challenge, and we must do many things against this anti-Semitic situation. But we are concerned about the war in Ukraine and in the Middle East. And some people said always, we have very wars in the world and you speak about synodality. But I think the problems of the world are present in the Synod, in the prayers and in the discussion, and always they give their suffering, give experience of their challenges in the different countries, and we practice in the prayer, and this is very important.
The Holy Father has announced a consistory to create new cardinals, and you've been a cardinal now for 14 years, and I wonder if you have any advice that you would give to the 20 cardinals elect on what it means to be a cardinal in our Holy Catholic Church.
To be a cardinal means that he must help the Universal Church and the leader of the Universal Church, the Pope, for his ministry, and to give a wider view of the Church in the country in which he is cardinal, in which he is bishop, and to have this relation between the local church and the Universal Church. This is important for the Catholic Church because we have 2 points. First, the plurality of the local churches and the uniqueness of the Universal Church. And to deepen this relationship seems to me very important, and not only in one way. Some people have always only a one-way vision. We must give all to Rome. But they must also take some things from Rome. What is the vision of the Pope? What is his will? What he wants for the Church? And to bring these concerns from the Universal Church to the local churches.
This week on Thursday, Pope Francis released his 4th encyclical on the Sacred Heart. I don't know if you've had the chance to read through it yet, as it just came out this week, but Your Eminence, do you have thoughts on Pope Francis directing us to the Sacred Heart and the fact that he timed the release of this encyclical to be during the last week of the Synod?
This is, I think, a very good sign, because the Sacred Heart is very important in the heart of the Pope, because the love of God to us humankind and our love to God and to the neighbor is the concern and is the heart of the Christian faith, and to deepen this question is very important. I see a very beautiful continuity also to Benedict XVI, because he has begun his pontificate with his encyclical about love, Deus Caritas Est, and the Pope Francis has his culmination of his pontificate with this encyclical of the Sacred Heart, and in this sense of the love of God and the love for the neighbor. And I think that he will show also what are the fruits of this love and what we have to do in this world. What is the mission? And this is very important. We speak always about synodality, but the main concern of Pope Francis is the mission. He speaks from a synodal missionary church, and we cannot forget this dimension of mission.
So less, self-reflection on what we can change about the church or about ourselves, but more about evangelizing the world and bringing Christ to the world. Yeah.
Well, Your Eminence, we are so grateful for your time during this week of the Synod. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, and all the best for you and your service.
Thank you, Eminence.
God bless.